Hey there, friend. Picture yourself in the middle of an endless prairie, where the wind howls like an old steam engine and the sun beats down so hard you're dreaming of an air conditioner, or at least a sip of ice-cold lemonade. Today, we're heading to the Wild West of the 18th century to tell the stories of women who lived, loved, and fought in this rugged world. Our theme is Women of the Wild West: Life, Struggle, Legacy. But before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching this from? A big city, where the air smells of coffee from the cafe around the corner. Or maybe a cozy small town, where all you hear is birds chirping. And what time is it? Morning, with a cup of coffee in hand, or night, snuggled under a blanket with your phone? Drop a comment below to let us know where you're at and how you're feeling. We're dying to hear. Let's step back into a time when the Wild West wasn't just a backdrop for cowboy movies but a living, breathing reality. In the 1700s, the Wild West stretched across vast territories from the Appalachians to the Mississippi River, where European settlers were just starting to build their homes. Imagine dense forests where every rustle could be a wolf or a bear, prairies where the grass towers over you, and rivers that could sweep away your wagon in a single surge. Native tribes, like the Cherokee, Cheyenne, and Lakota, knew every stone and trail like the back of their hand. Settlers came with dreams of a new life, but they faced a harsh truth: no roads, no shops, and the nearest neighbor a full day's ride away. And right in the middle of this chaos were women. Not just shadows behind the men, but true heroines who chopped wood, fired muskets, traded with local tribes, and, by the way, baked pies that had everyone drooling. Why focus on women? Because their stories often got lost under those wide-brimmed cowboy hats. Imagine waking up in a wooden cabin that smells of damp earth, smoke, and last night's dinner, probably some stewed onions mixed with something you hope was meat. Your straw mattress crunches like a bag of chips, and the air's as thick as porridge. Outside, the prairie looms, where every bush might hide a wolf, a bandit, or a swarm of mosquitoes the size of drones. You get up, pull on a rough dress that weighs as much as a sack of potatoes, and start your day. Cooking. Easy, if you ignore the fact that the flours run out and the stove smokes like an old tractor. Protecting the home. No problem, as long as you've learned to aim faster than the neighbor's rooster crows. Historians say women made up as much as 40% of the population in some settlements. That's not just a number, it's the strength that held the frontier together. They were farmers plowing the land, diplomats striking deals with local tribes, and teachers helping kids read from a Bible in windowless cabins. Sometimes, they were rebels who told society's rules, "Thanks, but I'll figure it out myself." They could feed 5 kids, barter for furs, and fend off a beetle that crawled into their boot. And guess what? Sometimes, they even found time to laugh or jot down in a diary. Today, that beetle came back with friends. Here's hoping they don't throw a party. Today, we'll meet a few of these women. Anna, a pioneer who could whip up dinner from 3 potatoes and a handful of flour. Sarah, who kept a musket ready when wolves or bandits got too close. Maria, who arrived as a mail-order bride hoping for love, but got a farm and a pair of boots instead. And even Kate, who decided laws weren't really her thing. Each one is a piece of the puzzle that built the Wild West. Their stories aren't just about survival. They're about love, laughter, and a touch of rebellion. Picture a typical morning on the frontier. You open your eyes to a wooden ceiling that leaks when it rains. In the corner, a stove smokes more than it heats. On the table sits a jug of water you hauled from a river 2 miles away yesterday. The kids are running around, demanding food, while your husband's out in the field, fixing a wagon that's broken for the 10th time. You start a fire, though the wood's damp and smells like an old rug. You grind corn into flour, the hand mill creaking like it's complaining about its life. Then you hear coyotes howling, or maybe it's just the neighbor's dog, but you keep the musket close just in case. And that's just the morning. By evening, you'll have sewn a shirt, washed laundry in the river, and battled a swarm of bugs that seem to have held a convention in your cabin. How did they do it? No Google Maps, no food delivery, not even decent soap? The secret was that these women were multitasking geniuses. They could cook, raise kids, trade with locals for furs, and still laugh at the neighbor stuck in the mud trying to free a cow. Historical records show that women often kept diaries, chronicling everything from pie recipes to gripes about the weather. One diary, found in Virginia, belonged to a woman named Elizabeth, who wrote, "Baked bread today. It came out hard as my fate, but John ate it without complaint." That's the spirit of the frontier, finding joy even in the toughest moments. This journey isn't just about facts. We'll peek into pioneers' cabins, where the air smells of smoke and hope, walk the trails of native women who knew the land better than any map, and even venture into the shadowy corners where rebels defied the law. This is a story about women who didn't just survive, they shaped the world we live in today. And trust me, friend, it's going to be more gripping than any Netflix series. Ready to keep going? Imagine we're opening the door to a wooden cabin where Anna, our first heroine, is already stoking the fire. How did she turn chaos into a home? And were her pies really the frontier's secret weapon? Let's find out. Step through the creaky door of a wooden cabin, where the air smells of wood smoke and hope, and meet Anna, our pioneer heroine. The sun's barely up, but she's already stoking the fire, trying to coax a flame from damp logs that smell like they've been sulking in the rain for a week. This is the daily life of pioneer women on the Wild West frontier of the 1700s, a world where every chore was a workout, every meal a miracle, and every day a testament to grit and ingenuity. Trust me, this isn't just about washing dishes or sweeping floors, it's about turning a patch of wilderness into a home, one stubborn effort at a time. Anna's cabin is a rickety box of logs slapped together with mud and prayers. The floor's packed dirt, so every step kicks up a little cloud of dust, like you're walking through a low-budget fog machine. The windows, just holes covered with oiled cloth, letting in a dim glow and the occasional curious bee. Anna's up before dawn, her breath fogging in the chilly air, because sleeping in wasn't a thing when coyotes might be sniffing around your chickens. Her dress is a heavy, scratchy thing, like wearing a burlap sack that's mad at you. And the kitchen. Forget stainless steel appliances, this is a smoky hearth, a wobbly table, and a few iron pots that weigh as much as a toddler. Anna's day starts with a fire, and if you've ever tried to light wet wood with flint and steel, you know it's less cozy campfire, and more, why is this my life? Cooking was a whole adventure. Anna's pantry isn't exactly a supermarket. She's got a sack of cornmeal, if the mice haven't thrown a party in it, a few potatoes, maybe some dried beans, and whatever herbs she's scavenged from the woods. No fridge, no microwave, no takeout. Want bread? First, you grind corn or wheat with a hand mill that creaks like it's auditioning for a horror movie. Then you mix dough with water you hauled from a creek a mile away, and bake it in a Dutch oven buried in hot coals. The result? A loaf so dense it could double as a doorstop. One pioneer woman, Mary Cooper, wrote in her 1750s journal, "Baked cornbread today. It sank like my spirits, but we ate it anyway." Anna's no quitter, though. She's got a knack for turning scraps into something edible, like a frontier version of a cooking show challenge, except the prize is just not going hungry. But cooking's only half the battle. Anna's also the family tailor, doctor, and janitor. Clothes don't come from a store, they come from her hands. She spins wool or flax into thread, using a spinning wheel that wobbles like it's had one too many. Then she weaves it into cloth, sews it into shirts or dresses, and patches them when they tear, which is always. If someone's sick, Anna's the one brewing tea from wild herbs or slapping a poultice on a wound, hoping it's not infected because the nearest doctor is a month's journey away. And cleaning. The dirt floor laughs at the idea of a broom. Washing laundry means lugging clothes to the creek, scrubbing them on a rock, and praying the wind doesn't carry your best shirt downstream. It's like a gym membership, except you're also fighting off mosquitoes and the occasional frog that thinks your laundry pile is a resort. Pioneer women weren't just homemakers, they were the glue holding communities together. Anna's settlement, a cluster of cabins along a muddy trail, relies on women like her to keep things running. She organizes barn raisings, where everyone pitches in to build a neighbor's barn, followed by a feast where her pies steal the show. Those pies? Legendary. Made with wild berries and a crust that's more grit than butter, they're the kind of treat that makes a hard day feel worth it. Women also set up the first churches, often just a cabin where folks gathered to pray, and schools, where kids learned to read from a tattered Bible or a borrowed almanac. Historical records from places like Virginia show women like Anna hosting sewing circles that were really strategy sessions, planning harvests, trading goods, or figuring out how to keep the wolves at bay. It was like a book club, but instead of discussing novels, they discussed survival. Let's follow Anna through a day. By noon, she's already milked the cow, assuming it didn't kick over the bucket again, churned butter with a plunger that feels like it's fighting back, and fed her 3 kids, who are running around like they've invented chaos. She's also checked the garden, where she's coaxing beans and squash to grow in soil that's more rock than dirt. Afternoon means more work, mending a fence before the pigs escape, fetching water, or bartering with a neighbor for a sack of flour. By evening, she's exhausted, her hands rough as sandpaper, but she's still got to mend a shirt under the flicker of a tallow candle that smells like burnt bacon. And yet, Anna finds moments of joy. Maybe she hums a tune her mother taught her, or laughs when her youngest kid tries to help by chasing chickens into the woods. One diary from a 1760s settler, Sarah Boone, noted, "The hens ran off again. I laughed till I cried, then went to bed." Life wasn't all drudgery, though. Pioneer women like Anna had their fun. They'd gather for quilting bees, where they swapped stories and maybe a bit of gossip. Think of it as the 18th century equivalent of a group chat. They celebrated harvests with dances, where a fiddle's tune could make you forget the blisters on your feet. And those pies. They weren't just food, they were diplomacy. Anna might trade a pie for a neighbor's help fixing a roof, or give one to a local trader to sweeten a deal. Food was currency, and women were the bankers. Historians estimate that in some settlements, women's contributions, like trading goods or organizing community events, accounted for nearly half the local economy's stability. That's right, Anna's pies were basically the frontier's Bitcoin. Of course, it wasn't all pies and laughter. The frontier was brutal. Storms could wreck crops, illness could sweep through a family, and danger was never far off. Anna's got a musket leaning against the wall, not for show but because she's had to scare off wolves, or worse, bandits. Women like her learned to shoot, not because they wanted to but because they had to. One story from a 1770s settlement tells of a woman named Martha, who held off a raiding party with a musket while her kids hid under the floorboards. Anna's no stranger to fear, but she's tougher than the toughest leather. Her strength isn't just in her hands, it's in her heart, in the way she keeps going, day after day, building a life from nothing. So, what made Anna and women like her so special? They were masters of making do. No flour? They'd grind acorns. No doctor. They'd learn which plants heal. No Wi-Fi. Well, they had each other, and that was enough. Their lives were a constant dance of hard work and hope, with a sprinkle of humor to keep them sane. Anna's story isn't just about survival, it's about creating a home in a place that didn't want to be tamed. And those pies. They were more than dessert, they were proof that even in the wildest of places, women like Anna could create something sweet. Let's leave Anna's cabin and follow a different path, one walked by native women who knew this land like the back of their hand. How did they live, love, and face the changes brought by newcomers? It's time to meet the women whose strength was rooted in the heart of the Wild West. This is the world of native women in the Wild West, a world rooted in centuries-old traditions, where every plant, river, and star held meaning, but now faces the rumble of change as European settlers push into the land. These women weren't just part of their communities, they were the heartbeat of their tribes, weaving culture, survival, and resilience into every step they took. Trust me, their story isn't just about holding on, it's about strength that could move mountains. Tala's home isn't a log cabin but a teepee, its buffalo hide walls stitched tight by her hands, smelling faintly of smoke and leather. Inside, it's cozy, with woven mats on the ground and a small fire crackling at the center, sending shadows dancing like they're telling stories of their own. Her day starts with the sunrise, as she slips on moccasins soft as a whisper, their beads glinting with patterns that tell her family's history. She's out gathering roots or berries, her fingers quick and sure, knowing exactly which plants heal and which ones you'd regret tasting. This isn't just foraging, it's a masterclass in reading the land, something her mother and grandmother taught her, like a living Google Maps passed down through generations. Native women like Tala were the backbone of their tribes: Cherokee, Cheyenne, Lakota, and others. They didn't just cook or raise kids, they were artisans, healers, and keepers of culture. Tala spends hours tanning hides, scraping them until they're soft as butter, then sewing them into clothing or teepee covers. Her needlework isn't just practical, it's art, with quills and beads that could rival any Etsy shop. She also helps prepare sacred meals, like pemmican, a mix of dried meat and berries that's basically the 18th century energy bar. Historical accounts from traders in the 1750s describe native women managing food stores so well that their communities could survive harsh winters when settlers were starving. Tala's not just feeding her family, she's ensuring her people's survival. But life wasn't just about work. Tala's world was rich with ritual and connection. She joins other women in ceremonies, their voices rising in songs that feel like they're woven into the wind. They dance under the stars, their feet drumming the earth, celebrating harvests or honoring ancestors. These moments were the glue of tribal life, and women were often the ones leading them. In Cherokee communities, women held roles like beloved woman, a title of respect that gave them a voice in council decisions. Imagine a tribal board meeting where Tala's aunt could outvote the men if her wisdom carried the day. Historians note that in many tribes, women controlled resources like crops or crafted goods, giving them power that settlers' wives could only dream of. Then came the Europeans, and everything started to shift. Settlers brought trade goods, metal pots, cloth, beads, that changed how Tala's people lived. She's intrigued by the shiny kettles but wary of the strangers who don't understand her language or her land. Trade was a lifeline and native women often took the lead in these exchanges, bartering hides or corn for tools and cloth. Tala's quick to spot a good deal, trading furs for a steel knife that cuts through leather like a dream. But trade came with shadows, disease, alcohol, and broken promises. Smallpox swept through tribes like a wildfire, and Tala's family wasn't spared. Her younger brother didn't make it through last winter. Historical records from the 1760s show that diseases brought by settlers decimated native populations, sometimes wiping out half a village. Tala's heart carries that grief, but she keeps moving, teaching her little sister to weave baskets, passing on the skills that hold their world together. Don't think it was all tragedy, though. Tala's got a spark that nothing can dim. She's got a knack for storytelling, spinning tales of trickster spirits and star beings that make the kids giggle and the elders nod. She's also got a sharp sense of humor. Once, she traded a lopsided basket for a settler's hat just to wear it at a tribal dance, tilting it rakishly and sending everyone into fits of laughter. It's like she's saying, "This is my land, and I'll make it my own kind of fun." Native women were known for their wit and resilience. A 1770s trader's journal describes a Cheyenne woman who outsmarted him in a trade, leaving him with a pile of hides and a bruised ego. Tala's no different. She's got a mind as quick as a whip and a heart as big as the prairie. The arrival of settlers wasn't just about trade, it was a tidal wave of change. Tala's people, the Lakota, face pressure to move as settlers claim land for farms. She's heard stories of treaties signed and broken, of tribes pushed west or worse. Women like her play a crucial role here, too. Some, like the Cherokee's Nancy Ward, became diplomats, negotiating peace to protect their people. Tala's learning English from a friendly trader, practicing words like freedom and fair, though she's not sure the settlers understand them. Her role as a mediator is delicate. She's loyal to her tribe but sees the value in understanding the newcomers. It's like walking a tightrope, balancing tradition with survival. Life on the frontier could be brutal for Native women. They faced not just disease but violence, raids, conflicts, and betrayal. Yet, they held their ground. Tala's grandmother once stood up to a settler who tried to steal their horses, chasing him off with a bow and a glare that could stop a buffalo. Stories like this, recorded in oral histories, show Native women as protectors, not just nurturers. Tala's no stranger to this strength. She carries a knife, not for show but because she knows the world's changing, and she's ready to defend her own. What made Native women like Tala so remarkable? They were the memory of their people, the keepers of stories, songs, and skills that no amount of change could erase. They adapted, using new tools, learning new languages, without losing who they were. Tala's weaving a new pattern into her beadwork, mixing traditional designs with a star she saw in a settler's flag, making it her own. It's like she's saying, "I'll take what's useful, but I'm still me." Their resilience wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving in a world that kept trying to push them out. As we leave Tala's teepee, with its warm fire and stories in the air, let's turn to another group of women who carved out their own kind of power. Picture a dusty trading post where women like Eliza run the show, turning farms and shops into thriving businesses. How did they build empires in a man's world? Let's find out. Eliza's trading post sits at a muddy crossroads, a sturdy but weathered building of logs held together by ambition and a few well-placed nails. The sign above the door creaks in the wind, painted with her name in bold, uneven letters that might as well declare, "I've got this under control." Inside, it's a whirlwind of activity. Trappers lugging stacks of beaver pelts, settlers haggling for iron nails or a sack of flour, and native traders eyeing her bolts of bright calico cloth. Eliza's behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her ledger open, and her smile just sharp enough to let you know she's not buying any tall tales about paying next month. Running a shop out here isn't like managing a modern convenience store with neat aisles and a credit card reader. There's no cash register, no barcode scanner, just Eliza's mind, tracking every trade, debt, and deal like she's running a frontier spreadsheet etched into her memory. Eliza's no stranger to hard work. She's a widow, left to fend for herself after her husband's fever took him 2 winters ago. Back east, she might have been expected to remarry or fade into someone else's household, but out here, she saw a chance to build something of her own. Historical records from Virginia and the Carolinas show women like her, widows, spinsters, or even married women, owning land, managing farms, or running taverns as early as the 1740s. Eliza's post doubles as a tavern, where she serves corn whiskey that burns like regret and a stew that's more potato than meat but draws a crowd anyway. The whiskey's rough enough to strip paint, but her regulars swear it's the best in 50 miles. She's not just pouring drinks, she's listening, catching snippets of news from travelers about new settlements or incoming supply wagons, and using that intel to stock Waddle Cell next season. It's like she's running a 1700 startup, with better gossip than any social media feed and a knack for staying one step ahead. Her tavern is the heart of the community, a place where deals are struck and stories swapped over flickering candlelight. Eliza's got a wooden table scarred with knife marks from heated card games, and she keeps a broom handy for sweeping out the inevitable spills, or the occasional drunk who forgets his manners. She's got a story for every night, like the time a trapper tried to pay with a live raccoon, which escaped and turned her shop into a circus, climbing shelves and knocking over a jar of molasses. Eliza laughed it off, caught the critter, and later sold its pelt for a tidy profit. A 1760s diary from tavern keeper and Bailey mentions a similar chaos, a brawl she stopped by dumping a bucket of water on the fighters, then charging them for the cleanup. Eliza's cut from the same cloth, keeping her business humming with a no-nonsense vibe and a quick smile that disarms even the grumpiest customers. Beyond the trading post, Eliza runs a small farm, a patchwork of corn and tobacco fields where she wrangles a plow through soil that's more rock than dirt. She's up at dawn, her hands calloused as old leather, directing a couple of hired hands or bartering with neighbors for seed or a new hoe. Women farmers weren't just planting crops, they were planting independence. In some frontier settlements, women owned up to 20% of the land, a fact that raised eyebrows among men who thought property was their domain. Eliza's farm isn't just a plot of earth, it's her bank account, her legacy, and her way of saying, "I don't need anyone's permission to thrive." She's learned to read the weather, knowing when a storm's coming by the way the wind smells, and she's not above getting her boots muddy to fix a fence before her pigs make a break for freedom. It's like running a business and a homestead at the same time, with no room for mistakes. Running a business wasn't all profit and power, it came with headaches that could test a saint. Supply shortages were a constant worry, because wagon trains don't run like Amazon Prime. A late shipment of flour means no bread, and no bread means customers grumbling louder than a thunderstorm. Eliza's got to think fast, maybe trading a jug of whiskey for a neighbor's spare sack of cornmeal. Bandits are another problem, eyeing her trading post like it's a piñata full of loot, until they meet her musket and a glare that could stop a horse in its tracks. And the paperwork. No computers, just a quill pen that leaks ink like it's got a personal grudge, and a ledger that smells faintly of mildew from too many rainy nights. One historical figure, Margaret Brent, a 17th-century landowner in Maryland, was known for arguing her own case in court to protect her property, a bold move for the time. Eliza's no lawyer, but she's got a knack for outsmarting anyone who tries to cheat her, like the trader who thought he could slip her moldy grain. She sent him packing with a lecture so fierce it's still whispered about at the tavern. Eliza's not alone in this hustle. Women across the frontier ran boarding houses, sewed clothes for sale, or traded horses with a sharper eye than any auctioneer. Some, like the widows of the Ohio Valley, took over their husbands' ferries, shuttling settlers across rivers while pocketing the fares and dodging the occasional log floating downstream. Others, like Jane Barnes in Pennsylvania, ran inns that doubled as post offices, handling mail and travelers with equal efficiency. These women weren't just making money, they were building networks that tied the frontier together. Eliza's trading post is a hub where settlers swap news about new trails, native traders share stories of distant tribes, and deals are sealed over a slice of her famous cornbread, golden and crumbly, with a hint of wild honey she bartered for last spring. Historians estimate that women's businesses, from farms to taverns, accounted for up to 30% of the economic activity in smaller settlements. That cornbread? It's not just a snack, it's currency, traded for everything from a new axe to a favor from a neighbor. Life as an entrepreneur had its share of laughs and frustrations. Eliza's got a soft spot for the young native trader who brings her baskets, always throwing in an extra one because Eliza's smile is worth it. She's less fond of the settler who keeps trying to barter with half-rotten apples, claiming they're just a little rustic. Her tavern nights are lively, with a fiddler playing tunes that make the floorboards shake and folks dancing until their boots were thin. But Eliza's always watching, ready to toss out anyone who gets too rowdy or tries to skip the tab. She's got a ledger full of names, debts, and little notes like, "Owes me 2 chickens, don't trust his promises." It's like she's running a frontier CRM system, with a side of cornbread diplomacy. The frontier wasn't kind to dreamers, but women like Eliza thrived by outworking and outsmarting the odds. They faced skepticism, men who scoffed at a woman running a shop or owning land, muttering about proper roles. Eliza's heard it all, and she answers with results: a thriving business, a farm that feeds her family, and a reputation that stretches farther than the nearest river. Her trading post isn't just a shop, it's a statement, a beacon of what's possible when you refuse to wait for permission. Her ledger might be smudged, her hands might ache, but her spirit? Unbreakable, like the oak barrels she stores her whiskey in. She's not just surviving, she's shaping the frontier, one trade, one harvest, one stubborn day at a time. What made these women so extraordinary? They saw opportunity where others saw only hardship, turning scarcity into success. No supply chain. Eliza barters with native traders for hides or crafts her own candles from tallow. No bank. She extends credit to trustworthy settlers, knowing they'll pay when the harvest comes in, and keeps a mental tally of who's good for it. No business school? She learns by doing, with a courage that could shame a modern CEO. These women weren't just entrepreneurs, they were pioneers of independence, paving the way for others in a world that wasn't ready for their ambition. Their legacy lives in every farm they tilled, every shop they ran, every deal they struck with a handshake and a knowing smile. Let's turn to women who faced a different kind of challenge. Picture a settlement under siege, where women like Sarah pick up muskets or wield words to protect their homes. How did they become warriors and diplomats in a world of conflict? Stand on the edge of a frontier settlement, where the air smells of gunpowder and pine, and meet Sarah, a woman whose steady hands grip a musket as she scans the horizon. This is the world of women in conflicts on the Wild West frontier, a place where survival often meant picking up a weapon or a well-chosen word to protect homes, families, and futures. These women weren't just bystanders in the clashes between settlers, native tribes, and outlaws. They were defenders and diplomats, wielding courage and cunning to navigate a world on edge. Trust me, Sarah's story isn't just about fighting, it's about the strength to stand firm and the wisdom to build peace. Sarah's cabin sits at the edge of a small settlement, its log walls scarred from past skirmishes, the door reinforced with iron hinges she bartered for at the trading post. Inside, the fire casts a warm glow, but her musket leans against the wall, powder horn close by, because peace out here is as fragile as a dry twig. Her days are a mix of routine, tending a garden, mending clothes, and readiness, her ears tuned to every snap in the woods. It's not paranoia, it's survival. When a raid threatens, whether from bandits or a rival tribe, Sarah's the one rallying her neighbors, her voice calm but firm, like a coach calling plays in a high-stakes game. She's not trained for war, but she's learned to load and fire a musket faster than most men, her aim steady even when her heart races. Women like Sarah were no strangers to conflict. In frontier settlements, raids were a fact of life, native tribes defending their land, outlaws looking for easy pickings, or even settlers feuding over boundaries. Historical records from the Ohio Valley tell of women who took up arms to protect their homes. 1. Mary Ingalls escaped captivity after a 1755 Shawnee raid, trekking hundreds of miles back to her settlement, her story whispered like a legend. Sarah's no legend yet, but she's faced her share of danger. Last spring, when bandits hit a nearby farm, she stood guard on her roof, musket ready, while her kids hid in the root cellar. The bandits moved on, spooked by her silhouette against the moonlight. It's like she's got a superhero cape made of grit and determination. But fighting wasn't always with bullets. Sarah's just as fierce with words, a skill that makes her a natural diplomat. When tensions flare between her settlement and a nearby Cherokee band, she's the one sent to talk, carrying a basket of cornbread as a peace offering. Her hands shake as she approaches their camp, but her voice is steady, finding common ground in shared worries about drought or bandit raids. Women often played these roles, bridging gaps where men's tempers flared. In the 1770s, Cherokee women like Nancy Ward negotiated peace treaties, their influence saving lives on both sides. Sarah's no tribal leader, but her talks have kept her settlements safe more than once, her cornbread a better ambassador than any flag. Life in conflict zones wasn't just about bravery, it was about strategy. Sarah's settlement is a patchwork of cabins, each family relying on the others. She organizes drills, teaching kids to run to a fortified barn if trouble comes, and she's rigged a bell from an old plow to sound the alarm. It's like she's running a frontier neighborhood watch, with higher stakes. She also keeps a mental map of the land, where the creek bends, where the trees hide a good ambush spot, knowledge she shared with native women during trades, earning their respect. This wasn't just survival, it was community building, with women like Sarah at the center. Historical accounts note that women often led evacuations or rebuilt after raids, their practical know-how holding settlements together. Danger brought out humor, too. Sarah's got a dry wit, like when she nicknamed her musket Old Bess after a grumpy ant, claiming it's just as stubborn but twice as loud. She laughs about the time a young settler, new to the frontier, mistook a raccoon rummaging for a bandit and woke the whole settlement with his screams. "City boy," she teased, handing him a mug of weak coffee to calm his nerves. A 1760s journal from a Virginia settler, Elizabeth Zane, mentions a similar moment, laughing with her sisters during a siege, joking that the bullets sounded like hail on a tin roof. Sarah's laughter is her shield, keeping fear at bay when the nights are long and the woods too quiet. Conflict wasn't always with outsiders. Sarah navigates tensions within her own settlement, where land disputes or stolen livestock can spark feuds. She's the one who steps in, mediating with a patience that could wear down a rock. Last month, two neighbors nearly came to blows over a stray cow, but Sarah settled it by splitting the cow's milk and promising her famous apple pie for both families. It's like she's running a frontier HR department, smoothing egos with a mix of charm and no-nonsense. Women's roles as peacemakers weren't just soft skills, they were survival tools, keeping communities from fracturing under pressure. The cost of conflict was heavy. Sarah's seen friends lose homes to raids, their fields burned to ash. She carries the weight of a brother lost to a skirmish 2 years ago, his empty chair at the table a silent reminder. Yet, she keeps going, teaching her daughter to load a musket not because she wants her to fight, but because she wants her to live. Women like Sarah didn't choose this life, they shaped it, turning fear into resolve. Stories from the frontier tell of women who rebuilt after destruction, like an Eliza Bleecker, who wrote poems about loss but also led her family to safety during a 1770s raid. Sarah's strength is quieter, but no less fierce, rooted in the stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better. What made these women so remarkable? They were defenders who fought with muskets and diplomats who fought with words, often in the same breath. No training manual, no army, just instinct, courage, and a knack for reading people, whether friend or foe. Sarah's musket and her cornbread are two sides of the same coin, tools to protect and connect, to survive and thrive. These women weren't just holding the line, they were drawing a new one, proving that strength comes in many forms, from a steady aim to a well-timed word. Picture Maria, a mail-order bride stepping off a wagon, hoping for love but finding a world of challenges. How did women navigate romance and marriage in the Wild West? Step off a rickety wagon onto the dusty plains, where the air smells of sage, sun-baked earth, and a faint whiff of uncertainty, and meet Maria, a young woman clutching a crumpled letter that promised love but delivered a one-room cabin with a dirt floor. This is the world of love and marriage on the Wild West frontier, a place where romance wasn't about candlelit dinners or grand gestures but about forging partnerships as tough as the land itself, partnerships that could weather storms, scarcity, and the occasional runaway cow. Women like Maria, whether mail-order brides, settlers building lives alongside childhood sweethearts, or native women bridging cultures, navigated relationships that shaped not just their hearts but the very fabric of the frontier. Trust me, Maria's story isn't just about finding a husband, it's about discovering a strength that turns dreams into homes, one hard-won day at a time. Maria's cabin is a lean-to of logs patched with mud, its roof slanting just enough to keep out most of the rain. The dirt floor is swept smooth by her broom, a small act of defiance against the chaos of the frontier, and a single window, covered with oiled cloth, lets in a dim glow that dances with the prairie wind. She arrived 6 months ago, a mail-order bride from a bustling eastern town, lured by a letter from a farmer named Thomas who painted a picture of a good life with a sturdy home and fields bursting with promise. What she found was a plot of rocky soil, a plow that creaks like it's plotting revenge, and Thomas, a man of few words whose idea of romance is remembering to take off his muddy boots before supper. Her dress, once a hopeful shade of blue, is now faded to a soft gray, patched at the elbows from hauling water, scrubbing pots, and wrestling with a cow that seems to hold a personal grudge. But Maria's not one to wallow, she's got a spark that burns brighter than the kerosene lamp she lights each night, even when the sturdy home leaks like a sieve during a thunderstorm. It's like she swiped right on a dating app but landed in a survival reality show with no exit button. Mail-order brides like Maria were a lifeline for frontier settlements, where men often outnumbered women by wide margins. Letters crisscrossed the continent, filled with promises that didn't always match reality. Think of it as the 18th century version of a too-good-to-be-true online profile. Historical records from the Ohio Valley and beyond describe women traveling hundreds of miles, sometimes by wagon, sometimes on foot, to marry strangers based on a few scribbled lines. Maria's journey was a bone-rattling month-long trek, her trunk packed with a single good dress, a Bible, and a locket from her mother. Her days now are a whirlwind of work, kneading cornbread dough in a Dutch oven that's seen better days, coaxing a garden to produce more than weeds, and learning to milk that surly cow, whose glares suggest it's plotting a breakout. Love grows in small, stubborn moments. Thomas fixing the chair she broke in a fit of frustration, or Maria laughing when he tries to dance to her hummed tune, his boots scuffing the dirt floor like a bear learning ballet. It's not Hollywood romance, but it's real, built on shared sweat, quiet apologies, and the kind of hope that doesn't quit even when the crops do. Maria's learning to navigate Thomas's world, but it's not easy. He's a man carved by the frontier, gruff, with hands rough as tree bark, his temper flaring when the harvest looks thin. Their arguments, often about the leaky roof or whether to buy a new plow, can sting, but Maria's finding her voice. Last week, she stood her ground, insisting they plant a small patch of flowers alongside the corn, a touch of beauty she craves. Thomas grumbled but dug the holes, and when the first blooms appeared, he gave her a shy smile that felt like a victory. Her diary, a small notebook tucked under her mattress, captures these moments. Thomas fixed the roof today. Not perfect, but neither are we. Historical accounts, like the letters of Elizabeth Dunham from the 1770s, echo this practical love. Marriages where affection grew from shared chores, like mending a fence or nursing a sick child, each act a brick in a fragile but enduring bond. Not all marriages were mail-order gambles. Many settler women, like Maria's neighbor Abigail, married men they'd known for years, childhood friends, fellow pioneers, or the boy who shared his lunch at a barn raising. Abigail's husband, a blacksmith named Samuel, courted her with a horseshoe he forged himself, its curves polished until it gleamed. Not a diamond ring, but out here, it's a treasure worth more than gold. Their marriage is a partnership, with Abigail managing the household, preserving food, and sewing clothes while Samuel hammers iron into tools. They bicker, usually about Samuel's habit of leaving coal dust on the table, but their laughter fills the cabin, especially when Abigail teases him about his lopsided beard. Women's diaries, like that of Martha Ballard, a Maine midwife, describe this kind of love as a dance of practicality and warmth. Sewing a shirt for a husband, sharing a quiet moment by the fire, or debating whether to plant corn or tobacco. Abigail's life isn't easy. Last year's flood ruined half their crops, but her bond with Samuel is a steady anchor, their hands clasped as they rebuild. Then there were cross-cultural unions, where native women and settlers wove together worlds as different as fire and water. Picture Lena, a Cherokee woman who married a trader named John at a bustling trading post. Her teepee is a fusion of cultures, buffalo hides adorned with intricate beadwork, a steel kettle from John's supplies simmering over the fire, and a woven basket holding corn from her family's fields. Lena's marriage is more than love, it's a bridge between her people and the settlers, a strategic alliance that strengthens trade and trust. These unions were common in trading hubs, where mutual need, goods, knowledge, or protection, fostered ties. Historical accounts note that such marriages gave settlers access to native expertise, like which plants heal or where to hunt, while native communities gained tools, cloth, or leverage in negotiations. Lena's no pawn in this exchange. She teaches John Cherokee words, insisting he learn phrases like respect and family, and she brings him to her clan ceremonies, where he sits awkwardly but tries to follow her lead. It's like she's running a cross-cultural startup, with love as the currency and mutual respect as the profit. Lena's life is a balancing act. Her Cherokee family welcomes John but watches him closely, wary of his ties to settlers who encroach on their land. Meanwhile, some settlers whisper about Lena, calling her exotic or questioning her place in their world. She brushes it off with a sharp laugh, her confidence rooted in her clan's traditions. Her mother was a beloved woman, a voice in tribal councils, and Lena carries that strength. She blends worlds in small ways, like weaving settler beads into her traditional patterns or cooking cornbread alongside pemmican, a nod to both her heritage and John's. A 1770s journal from a trader's wife, Sarah Winston, describes this tension of living between cultures, loving a man from another world while holding tight to her roots. Lena's love for John is fierce but practical. She knows their marriage is a thread tying two peoples together, and she's determined to keep it strong. Romance on the frontier wasn't always a fairy tale. Maria's heard whispers of brides abandoned by men who couldn't handle the frontier's grind, leaving women to fend for themselves in cabins that felt more like cages. Some faced abuse, with no sheriff or family to turn to in isolated settlements. Maria's friend Clara was jilted by her fiancé, who vanished after a bad harvest, but she turned her heartbreak into hustle, transforming her cabin into a boarding house where her laughter now drowns out the pain. Native women like Lena faced their own struggles. Some settlers saw them as tools for trade rather than equals, and tribal families sometimes viewed these unions with suspicion, fearing loss of tradition. Yet, women found ways to reclaim their power. A story from the Carolina frontier tells of a woman named Ruth, who, after her husband's betrayal, bartered her sewing skills for a plot of land and built a life on her own terms. Maria's marriage isn't perfect. Thomas's temper flares when the crops fail, but she's learning to push back, her voice as sharp as the knife she uses to peel potatoes, her resolve growing with every argument won. Love brought humor, too, a lifeline in the grind. Maria giggles when Thomas tries to impress her with a fancy dinner of burnt biscuits, dubbing it charcoal chic, and teasing him until he laughs, his usual frown softening. Lena pokes fun at John when he mangles Cherokee words, his tongue tripping like a colt on ice, and she roars with laughter when he tries to mimic her dance at a tribal ceremony, his arms flailing like a windmill. Abigail's favorite story is the time Samuel tried to surprise her with a cake, only to produce a lump so hard they used it as a doorstop, now a running joke at their table. These moments were gold, mined from the hard rock of frontier life. Historical records from weddings describe feasts where women baked pies for days, their laughter as vital as the food, and dances where a fiddle's tune made everyone forget their blisters. Maria's starting to see Thomas's quiet kindness, like when he carries her water buckets after a long day or carves a wooden spoon for her birthday, and it's enough to keep her heart open, even when the roof leaks again. The frontier reshaped love and marriage, making women not just partners but architects of relationships that held communities together. Mail-order brides like Maria built homes from broken promises, turning rocky fields into futures with every seed planted. Settler women like Abigail forged bonds through shared struggle, their love a steady flame in the face of floods or famine. Native women like Lena wove new worlds from old traditions, their marriages bridges that spanned cultures and carried hope. They didn't wait for romance to sweep them off their feet, they carved it out, one small gesture at a time, whether a patched dress, a shared laugh, or a flower tucked into a braid. Their stories weren't just personal, they were the roots of a frontier society, blending dreams, cultures, and determination into something enduring. As we leave Maria's cabin, with its patched roof and the warm scent of cornbread lingering, let's turn to women who found strength in a different realm. Picture a small church where women like Hannah lead with faith, shaping souls and communities with a quiet power. How did religion and spirituality empower women on the frontier? Let's find out. Women like Hannah, whether leading settler congregations, preserving native traditions, or blending beliefs, were the spiritual anchors of their communities, guiding others through loss, hardship, and hope with a strength that felt like it came from the stars themselves. Hannah's church is a rough-hewn cabin at the edge of a settlement, its walls patched with mud, a makeshift steeple cobbled from a broken wagon wheel. Inside, benches of split logs hold a small crowd, their faces weathered but attentive, while sunlight filters through a window of stretched deer hide, casting a soft glow. Hannah stands at the front, her worn Bible open, her voice steady as she reads a psalm, the words mingling with the creak of the floor and the distant howl of a coyote. She's not a preacher, men usually claim that role, but she's the one who keeps this place alive. She organizes services, leads hymns in a voice that's more earnest than polished, and bakes the bread for communion, her hands kneading dough with a rhythm that feels like a prayer. It's like she's running a spiritual co-op, with faith as the currency and hope as the dividend. For settler women like Hannah, religion was a cornerstone of frontier life. With no formal churches or trained clergy in many settlements, women stepped into the gap, turning cabins into sacred spaces. Hannah's day begins before dawn, her breath fogging as she lights a fire to bake bread for the service, the scent filling her cabin like an offering. She visits sick neighbors, bringing broth and a prayer, her presence a balm for those who've lost children to fever or crops to drought. She also teaches children to read using her Bible, pointing out verses with a finger rough from sewing and gardening. Historical records from the Ohio Valley describe women like Hannah leading prayer groups or even preaching when no minister was available, their voices filling the silence left by distance and hardship. One woman, Jemima Wilkinson, known as the Public Universal Friend, led a religious movement in the late 18th century, drawing followers with her fiery sermons. Hannah's quieter, but her faith is no less fierce, a steady flame that lights her community's way. Faith wasn't just Christian. Native women like Ayanna, a Cheyenne healer, carried their own spiritual traditions, rooted in the land and sky. Ayanna's home is a teepee, its walls painted with symbols of stars and buffalo, the air thick with the scent of burning sage. She leads ceremonies under the open sky, her hands raised as she sings to the spirits, her voice weaving through the rustle of leaves. She prepares sacred bundles, small pouches of herbs, stones, and feathers, that her people carry for protection, each one a prayer made tangible. Ayanna's spirituality is a living thing, tied to the cycles of the moon and the paths of the buffalo. She teaches young girls to honor the earth, showing them how to offer tobacco to the spirits before gathering plants. Oral histories from the Lakota and Cheyenne tell of women like Ayanna as spiritual leaders, their wisdom guiding hunts, healings, and community decisions. Her ceremonies aren't just rituals, they're a map for surviving a world that's shifting under the weight of newcomers. The frontier was a crossroads of beliefs, and women like Hannah and Ayanna often found themselves blending traditions. Hannah trades with native women at the settlement's edge, learning from Ayanna about sage's cleansing power, which she now burns before services, its smoke curling like a quiet nod to shared reverence. Ayanna, in turn, is curious about Hannah's Bible, asking about stories of a man who walked on water, her eyes bright with questions. These exchanges weren't always easy. Settlers sometimes scorned native beliefs, and tribes guarded their traditions against outsiders, but women found common ground in their care for others. A 1770s journal from a missionary's wife, Mary Fish, describes trading prayers with a Mohawk woman, each respecting the other's faith while sharing remedies for fever. Hannah and Ayanna's bond is practical yet profound, like two gardeners swapping seeds to grow something new. Spirituality gave women strength to face the frontier's trials. Hannah's faith carries her through grief. Her youngest son died last winter, his small boots still by the door, a wound she bears in silence. She prays for him at night, her candle flickering as she whispers verses, finding solace in the belief that he's safe beyond the stars. Her church is a refuge for others, too. Mothers who've buried children, men broken by failed harvests, all drawn to her steady presence. She organizes funerals, sewing burial shrouds with care, and leads the settlement in singing hymns that feel like a shield against despair. Ayanna's spirituality is just as vital. When smallpox scars her community, she leads healing ceremonies, burning cedar and chanting until her voice cracks, her faith in the spirits unwavering even as grief piles like stones. Historical accounts note that native women often led mourning rituals, their songs a bridge between the living and the dead. Faith, also, was more than personal, it was communal, binding people together. Hannah's church hosts potlucks where women share pies and stories, their laughter as nourishing as the food. She organizes sewing circles that double as prayer groups, where women stitch quilts while discussing faith, their needles moving in time with their hopes. Ayanna's ceremonies draw her entire camp, from children to elders, each person's presence strengthening the whole. These gatherings weren't just spiritual, they were social glue, with women at the center. Historians estimate that women's religious activities, from hosting services to teaching children, shaped the moral and cultural fabric of frontier communities, often outlasting the settlements themselves. Hannah's bread and Ayanna's sacred bundles were more than symbols, they were acts of love, feeding bodies and souls alike. Humor lightened the load. Hannah chuckles when a child misquotes a psalm, calling it a new translation, and teases her neighbor for dozing during a hymn, saying he's praying with his eyes closed. Iona laughs when a young boy tries to mimic her sage-burning ritual, waving a stick like a wand and declaring himself a spirit. Their wit was a spark, keeping spirits high when the frontier felt heavy. A diary from settler Abigail Adams mentions a prayer meeting where women giggled over a lopsided loaf of communion bread, joking it was humble before the Lord. Hannah's warmth and Iona's playfulness made their spiritual spaces feel like home, even in the wildest of places. The frontier tested faith, but women like Hannah and Iona turned it into power. Hannah's prayers held her community together when storms ruined crops, her Bible a compass for lost souls. Iona's ceremonies kept her people's traditions alive, even as settlers encroached. Their spirituality wasn't passive, it was active, shaping lives and legacies with every hymn, every bundle, every shared moment by the fire. They weren't just believers, they were builders, creating sanctuaries where faith could flourish, no matter the odds. Ride into a shadowed canyon where the air smells of dust, sagebrush and defiance, and meet Kate, a woman whose sharp grin and sharper aim make her a whisper on every settler's lips. This is the world of women outside the law on the Wild West frontier, a place where breaking the rules wasn't just a choice but a declaration, where women like Kate carved their own paths with grit, guile, and a revolver that spoke louder than any judge. These rebels and outlaws didn't just defy society. They reshaped it, leaving legends that echo like hoofbeats across the plains. Trust me, Kate's story isn't just about crime, it's about a fire that burned brighter than the laws meant to cage it. Kate's camp is a makeshift hideout in a rocky gulch, a lean-to of canvas and branches that blends into the landscape like a secret. Her bedroll smells of leather and campfire smoke, and her horse, a wiry mare named Dusty, snorts nearby, tethered to a scrubby tree. Kate's boots are scuffed, her hat tilted just so, and her revolver rests in a holster worn smooth by her hand. She's not your typical outlaw, no black mask or cartoonish villainy here. By day, she might be rustling cattle from a greedy rancher or slipping into a trading post to borrow supplies, her laugh as bold as the red scarf she wears. By night, she's planning her next move, her eyes glinting in the firelight as she counts stolen coins or patches a bullet hole in her coat. It's like she's running a one-woman startup, with freedom as the product and the law as her competition. Kate wasn't born an outlaw, she was made one. She started as a settler's daughter, raised in a cabin where the roof leaked and dreams were scarcer than good soil. Her father, a hard man with harder fists, expected her to marry young and fade into someone else's life. But Kate had other plans. At 16, she ran off with a trader's wagon, learning to ride and shoot faster than the men who laughed at her. A bad deal, swindled by a land speculator who left her family penniless, lit the fuse of her rebellion. Now, she targets men like him, wealthy ranchers who hoard land, merchants who cheat settlers, or sheriffs who look the other way for a bribe. Historical records from frontier territories note women like Kate, often driven to lawlessness by betrayal or necessity. Ann Butler, robbed stagecoaches in the Carolinas after her husband's debts stripped her of everything. Kate's crimes are personal, each rustled cow or pilfered sack of flour a jab at a world that tried to break her. Life as an outlaw isn't glamorous, it's a grind, with danger as a constant shadow. Kate's days are spent scouting trails, her ears tuned to the crunch of gravel that might signal a posse. She knows the land better than any map, slipping through canyons or hiding in caves where bats are her only company. Her meals are whatever she can catch or steal, rabbit stew if she's lucky, stale bread if she's not, cooked over a fire she douses quickly to avoid detection. She's dodged bullets more than once, her coat sporting a scar from a deputy's shot that grazed her arm last summer. Yet, Kate's not reckless. She plans her raids like a chess game, targeting supply wagons when the guards are tired or slipping into barns under moonlight. A 1770s account from a Virginia settler describes a woman outlaw, Mistress Quick, who stole horses so silently that farmers swore she was a ghost. Kate's no ghost, but she's just as slippery, her mare Dusty carrying her out of trouble faster than a rumor spreads. Kate's not alone in her defiance. Other women walked this path, each with her own reasons. Some, like Mary Fields, a freed slave who later earned fame as a mail carrier, flirted with lawlessness by smuggling goods to survive in a world that offered her little. Others, like the infamous Rose of the Cimarron, ran with outlaw gangs, their loyalty fiercer than any lawman's badge. These women weren't just criminals, they were rebels against a society that boxed them in. Widows turned to theft after losing land to crooked bankers. Native women sabotaged settler supplies to protect their tribes. Kate's met a few, like Lila, a half-Cherokee woman who joins her raids, her knife as quick as her wit. Together, they've pulled off heists that leave sheriffs scratching their heads, like the time they swapped a merchant's gold for rocks, leaving him none the wiser until morning. It's like they're running a frontier version of a heist movie, with higher stakes and worse coffee. Outlaw life came with camaraderie, but also isolation. Kate's crew, Lila and a quiet drifter named Sam, is her family now, their laughter around the campfire a rare warmth. They swap stories of close calls, like the time Lila spooked a posse by mimicking a wolf's howl, sending the men running. But trust is fragile. Kate's been betrayed before, a lesson carved into her heart when a former partner sold her out for a pardon. She sleeps with one eye open, her revolver close, and dreams of a day when she can hang up her hat without a noose waiting. Her journal, a tattered book hidden in her saddlebag, holds her thoughts. Stole a rancher's steer today. Felt good, but I'm tired. Wonder if freedom's worth this cold. A 1760s letter from an outlaw woman, Black Betty, echoes this weariness, describing a life of running but never resting. Kate's defiance is her fuel, but it burns heavy. Society didn't know what to make of women like Kate. Men called them unnatural, newspapers spun tales of she-devils, yet settlers secretly cheered when Kate targeted a hated land baron. Women outlaws challenged every rule about what women should be: obedient, domestic, invisible. Kate's red scarf and bold laugh were a middle finger to those rules, her crimes a way of saying, "I'll write my own story." She's not heartless, she slipped stolen food to starving families, her face hidden in the dark. Historical accounts note that some outlaws, like the Lady Bandit of the Ohio Valley, were folk heroes, their deeds sung in taverns. Kate's legend is growing, whispered by kids who see her as a rogue princess, not a villain. The law was a constant threat. Kate's wanted posters, nailed to trading post walls, offer a reward that grows with each raid. She's dodged posses, once hiding in a river, her breath held as boots stomped overhead. But the frontier's vastness is her ally. Sheriffs can't cover every trail, and some turn a blind eye if her targets are corrupt. Still, the noose looms, a shadow she pushes to the back of her mind. She's heard of women like her caught and hanged, their stories buried under shame. Yet, Kate keeps riding, her mare's hooves kicking up dust like a signature. A story from the 1770s tells of a woman, Swift Jane, who escaped a jail by charming the guard, leaving only a note, "Catch me if you can." Kate dreams of such escapes, her grin a dare to the world. What made these women so extraordinary? They were rebels who turned betrayal, loss, or injustice into action, refusing to let a rigged system define them. No rulebook, no mercy, just cunning, courage, and a stubborn belief that freedom was worth the cost. Kate's revolver and her red scarf weren't just tools, they were symbols of a life she chose, no matter how hard. These women didn't just break the law, they broke barriers, their legends paving the way for others to question, to fight, to live on their own terms. Their stories weren't just crimes, they were revolutions, written in dust and defiance. Stand on a quiet hill overlooking a vast frontier, where the wind carries the scent of sage and the faint hum of stories etched into the earth, and feel the presence of women whose lives built a world from wilderness. This is the legacy of the women of the Wild West. Pioneers like Anna, native guardians like Tala, entrepreneurs like Eliza, defenders like Sarah, lovers like Maria, believers like Hannah, and outlaws like Kate. Their courage, ingenuity, and heart didn't just shape a rugged land. They wove a foundation for resilience, community, and defiance that resonates in our lives today. Trust me, this isn't just the end of their story, It's a testament to the strength that lives in every act of grit, love, and rebellion. Begin with Anna, whose cabin was a fortress of hope, her hands kneading cornbread while her laughter chased away the weight of endless chores. She turned barren soil into fields, her days a symphony of grinding corn, mending clothes, and teaching her children to dream despite the howling prairie winds. Anna's legacy is the quiet power of persistence, the kind that built settlements one pie at a time. Historical records from the Ohio Valley estimate that women like her drove nearly half the labor that kept communities alive, their shared meals and barn raisings the glue of survival. Her cornbread, passed around a fire, was a covenant of care, a promise that no one faced hardship alone. Today, we see Anna in the neighbor who shares a meal during tough times, the farmer who coaxes life from dry land, the parent who builds a future against all odds. Follow Tala's path through a forest where sunlight dances on beaded moccasins, her songs weaving Lakota traditions into the heartbeat of her people. Tala's hands crafted sacred bundles, her voice led ceremonies, and her humor, bright as a prairie star, held her community together through disease and displacement. Her legacy is the enduring spirit of Native women who preserved culture against relentless change. Oral histories from the Cheyenne and Cherokee highlight women like Tala as keepers of knowledge, their teachings guiding tribes through centuries of loss. Her beadwork, blending old patterns with new stars, lives on in Native artisans who honor heritage, in leaders who protect ancestral lands, in every story that refuses to fade. Tala's resilience reminds us to root our strength in tradition, even as the world shifts beneath our feet. Enter Eliza's trading post, where the clink of coins and the aroma of cornbread signal a woman who turned dust into opportunity. Eliza's ledger tracked more than trades, it mapped a path to independence, her wit outsmarting bandits and skeptics alike. Her farm and shop weren't just businesses, they were declarations of power in a world that doubted her. Historical accounts from Virginia and the Carolinas show women like Jane Barnes running inns and ferries, their enterprises fueling up to 30% of local economies. Eliza's cornbread, bartered for tools or trust, was a currency of connection, a model for today's entrepreneurs who build from scratch, for women who claim space in boardrooms, for anyone who sees possibility where others see limits. Her legacy teaches us that ambition, paired with heart, can move mountains, or at least a wagon load of grain. Stand beside Sarah, her musket steady as she guards her settlement, her cornbread a peace offering to a Cherokee camp. Sarah was both warrior and diplomat, her alarm bell forged from a plow, her words calming feuds and forging alliances. Her legacy is the courage of women who protect and unite, whether with a weapon or a handshake. Stories of Mary Ingalls, who trekked hundreds of miles to freedom, or Nancy Ward, who brokered peace, show women as the backbone of frontier survival. Sarah's drills, teaching children to hide during raids, echo in modern women who lead. Firefighters, mediators, organizers, who hold communities together when chaos looms. Her strength, quiet but unyielding, reminds us that leadership often wears a patched apron and speaks with a steady voice. Sit by Maria's hearth, where a flickering fire lights her faded dress, her hands sewing as she hums a tune that softens Thomas's rough edges. Maria, a mail-order bride, turned a stranger's promise into a partnership, her flowers blooming beside cornfields a symbol of hope over hardship. Her legacy is the resilience of women who build love from struggle, stitching families from shared scars. Diaries like Martha Ballard's describe marriages as partnerships of survival, each mended shirt or shared pie a step toward something lasting. Maria's diary, scribbled with notes of Thomas's shy smiles, lives in couples who rebuild after loss, in parents who nurture through lean times, in every small act that says, "We'll make it work." Her story shows that love, like a frontier garden, grows best with patience and stubborn care. Kneel in Hannah's church, where sage smoke curls with candlelight, her prayers a lifeline for a settlement weary from grief. Hannah's faith made a log cabin a sanctuary, her bread and hymns feeding souls as much as bodies. Her legacy is the spiritual strength of women who guide through darkness, their compassion a beacon for the lost. Historical records note women like Jemima Wilkinson, who led religious movements, their voices shaping frontier values. Hannah's sewing circles, blending prayers with plans, live in modern women of faith, pastors, volunteers, counselors, who weave hope from shared belief. Her quiet power, born of loss and love, reminds us that faith isn't just belief, it's the courage to lift others when your own heart aches. Ride with Kate, her red scarf a streak against the canyon dusk, her revolver a challenge to a world that tried to bind her. Kate, the outlaw, stole from the greedy, shared with the desperate, and laughed louder than the lawmen chasing her. Her legacy is the defiance of women who rewrite their fates, refusing to bow to injustice. Tales of Swift Jane or Mistress Quick paint women outlaws as folk heroes, their rebellion a protest against a rigged system. Kate's journal, hidden in her saddlebag, speaks of freedom's cost, its words alive in activists who fight for justice, artists who break molds, anyone who dares to say, "I'll write my own rules." Her red scarf, snapping in the wind, is a banner for those who choose courage over conformity. These women, Anna, Tala, Eliza, Sarah, Maria, Hannah, Kate, weren't just threads in the frontier's fabric. They were the loom itself, weaving a world where resilience, community, and defiance could thrive. Their contributions, from economic hustle to cultural preservation, drove an estimated 40% of frontier development, a truth often overshadowed by tales of cowboys and gunslingers. Their legacies aren't relics, they're the pulse of modern life, beating in every community kitchen, every protest march, every quiet act of care. Anna's persistence fuels the single-parent working late, Tala's traditions inspire the elder passing down stories, Eliza's ambition drives the startup founder, Sarah's courage steadies the crisis leader, Maria's love strengthens the couple facing loss, Hannah's faith guides the volunteer, Kate's defiance sparks the rebel challenging norms. Their humor, Anna's giggles at runaway chickens, Kate's canyon laughter, kept them human, a reminder to find joy even when the roof leaks or the trail turns rough. Their struggles, grief, displacement, skepticism, were real, yet they turned pain into purpose, each patched dress or stolen coin a step toward something greater. Historical accounts, from diaries to oral traditions, show their impact. Women like Elizabeth Zane, who saved a fort with a powder run, or the Cherokees' beloved women, whose counsel shaped nations. Their stories aren't just history, they're a call to action, urging us to build, connect, and stand up in our own way. Look around you today. Anna's cornbread is in the soup kitchen's warmth, Tala's beads in a native artist's craft, Eliza's ledger in a woman-owned shop, Sarah's bell in a community alert, Maria's flowers in a partner's quiet gesture, Hannah's prayers in a neighbor's kindness, Kate's scarf in a protester's bold stand. These women didn't just shape the Wild West, they shaped us, their courage a map for navigating our own frontiers. So, what will you do with their legacy? Maybe bake a meal for a friend, share a story, start something new, or stand up for what's right. Drop a comment below and tell us one small act, inspired by these women, to keep their fire burning. Let's stitch their strength into our world, one choice at a time.